and welcome back to Uncultured Twenties. My name is Julia.
And my name is Liam.
And this podcast is a journey of us culturally educating ourselves in what is considered classic in pop culture.
Yeah, like media where people say, oh my god, you've never seen that, or you have to listen to that, like those annoying things.
Films, music, videos, albums, consumable content. We review it and why we think it's made its way into the canon.
Or maybe why it shouldn't be.
We're always open to suggestions, so keep up with us at Uncultured Twenties on Instagram and TikTok. We're also on Letterboxd and Twitter at Uncultured Twenties.
This season, we're covering all things TIFF.
Today, we're joined by director Billy Luther, director of the film Frybread, Face and Me.
Uncultured Twenties.
Jumping right in, Frybread, Face and Me follows Benny, a young boy from San Diego with big dreams to see his idols Fleetwood Mac this summer. However, a wrench is thrown in these plans when he is sent by his parents to live with his Navajo grandmother on the reservation in Arizona for the summer. Benny's grandmother doesn't speak English and only speaks to him in Navajo, leaving him feeling extra isolated.
Things shift when Benny's cousin Dawn, who is nicknamed Frybread Face because her face is round and greasy like a fry bread, says her family, is unexpectedly dropped off at the reservation to stay with them. Dawn speaks Navajo and begins to act as a bridge between Benny and his grandmother.
Benny and Dawn grow very close over the summer, and we learn more about his family and their connections, including his Uncle Marvin, who makes fun of Benny for playing with dolls, which are his action figures, and his transient Aunt Lucy, who everyone looks down on for selling cheap jewelry and never settling down. Through their chaotic relationships, we also see a bit of what binds them together as a family.
Yeah, like when Benny says to Dawn, you know, Frybread Face is also delicious, or like something like that. It's like maybe round and greasy, but it's really good. Like after a bull riding accident leaves Marvin, the uncle, wheelchair bound, Dawn and Benny take a joyride in his car, and they end up finding a sheep that they lost earlier that summer. It's this triumphant moment for the two, and it's a really sweet display of the connection that they now have.
Dawn and Benny are also bonded by the struggles that they are going through. Dawn, whose father's in jail, and Benny, whose parents are going through a divorce. Through it all, we see two kids who are experiencing the ups and downs of life, while also experiencing and participating in their family's culture in a way that Benny, in particular, has not experienced before.
It was a really good film. I really liked so many. I mean, this is the type of film that I love to watch over and over again. Kind of slice of life. Not calm, but like there wasn't like some big stressful moment. It reminded me of Boyhood by Richard Linklater. It reminds me of those films where it's just like capturing this sort of moment in time, and I really liked that.
I also really liked this film. I thought it was very heartwarming and also such a neat look into just the lives of all these characters. Like you said, it's not, I mean, I think especially like myself, I'm always watching these movies with giant, like so much tension, and like, you know, if it's like either a ton of action or just like this like very dramatic like undertone. And so it is nice to just sort of step back from that and see a film that is just sort of a coming of age story, just taking a look into the life and the relationships of the characters.
Yeah, it really struck a chord with me, you know, the strength of language, because I myself can't speak with my grandmother on my mom's side. And so we'll talk about this more with Billy in the interview, but the relationship is so physical because that's the only way that you can interact with each other. So sort of trying to communicate with each other without words, and it's really difficult, but it's nice. It was a really good display of the understanding that's there, which is, I think, really hard to verbalize sometimes.
Yeah, I don't have that necessarily with my family because my grandparents spoke English, but it was kind of the same feeling about like the culture speaking for itself. Like for us, it was always with food, I feel. And like we would, like that was kind of like the love language was just making all these like Arabic foods and things. And then bringing the kids in and showing them like, oh, this is how you eat the kibanaya with like the nana and whatever, like it would be like oil and mint or whatever. But yeah, it's I thought that this film really did a good job of showing us, especially obviously because they couldn't speak to each other, how there is more than just being able to speak to each other that bonds us, and there's other ways to communicate. And I thought it was interesting too, like in the beginning of the film, before Dawn arrives, when she's speaking to him in Navajo and it's just the two of them, there's no subtitles. So it's really showing you, like, you know, how isolating, and how at first he can't connect to her in that way. And then as it goes on, we start to hear the story.
I also really liked how they sort of put his dreams in the film. At first, you know, he doesn't understand his grandmother in the dream, but then later on they can speak with one another in his dreams. And I think he sees his mother in one of them, like, you know, he's really connecting with his inner self through his dreams. And also with that sheep, there was a lot of symbolism because the sheep ran away, and then like when they bring the sheep back is when his mom came back, because the mom was sort of seen as that sibling in the family that left the family and sort of ran away from the family. So with the sheep coming back is when his mom also came to pick him up. And I also thought, I was like, oh, I thought there was still way more left of the movie. I didn't expect her to come back so soon.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's done already. Like, I want them to stay. Like, I mean, I feel like we all feel that when we're at our cousin's house having fun, and then all of a sudden your parents are there and you're like, wait, no, like, can we just stay one more night, please? I think the cousin experience was definitely highlighted in that, like when they did that sort of diner thing, when they were like serving the uncle and the grandma, they're like having a whole diner scene. Like, I feel like my cousins and I were like, oh, we're gonna have a restaurant and serve people.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, every child had a restaurant with their cousins.
I love how I feel like I heard this a few years ago, and it's really struck with me, is like the more specific your experience, like, that you display, it's actually like the more applicable to everyone. If you try to make something too general and too universal, it applies to no one. But when you really zone in on your specific experience and your specific stories, it actually ends up connecting with people that you never knew that would connect with.
I feel like on TikTok too, I've been seeing that a lot. Like, there's that period of time where everyone was like, oh, we've all just collectively lived the same life, because like there's all these TikToks that were like so applicable to everybody. But it's funny to see. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, we were all just like kids in the summer, and we all were just like hanging out with our cousins and stuff.
Yeah, I miss that. Like, now I'm like trying to get like 2 days to go spend with my cousins, and I'm like, oh my god, I wish it was just like back in the day when I could spend 2 months there and just shoot the shit. And we would like they live sort of in like bumfuck nowhere. So we would just like walk down the street. Like, I remember this one story where my cousins, they decided to walk to the like local dairy freeze, and it took them like 2 hours or something, and then on the way back they hitched a ride with like a mail truck because they were like, we can't walk back, it's like, it's too far.
That's awesome. Yeah, we would go to our grandparents' house, and like we'd be like, we're gonna stay over for like a week, and then we'd just like walk in the field for like hours. Like, those were simpler times.
Yeah. And I also really liked the cast. A lot of the cast members it's their first time being in a film, and I thought it was really honest and really natural on screen, and I thought it was really good, like especially the actress who plays Frybread. Like, I thought she was really witty. I think she was actually the first person that they cast in the film.
Okay.
They were like, this is the person.
Yeah. Yeah, she definitely played that, like, the role of like the kind of know-it-all cousin so well. Like, when they're just like, oh, well, she's like, well, you can't even speak like any of this language, like, you're such a loser. And he's like just like vying for her approval a little bit. But
yeah, I definitely relate to that, like trying to get your older cousin's approval, but then also being on the other side and being the older one and being like, oh, you're just a kid, like, I don't want anything to do.
For sure.
One line that Frybread said that really stuck with me was when they were talking about dolls. So Billy was carrying around these action figures, and Frybread, or Dawn, was carrying around this like doll where it was kind of like, was it like the head was like a real like doll, or
like a Cabbage Patch Kid head of a doll, and then it was like a sewn, like hand sewn body.
Yeah, and it was like kind of creepy looking.
Yeah, but his name Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, I think Benny says, why do you carry around that doll? And she said, if your mom made it, wouldn't you carry it around too?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was like a really poignant moment of the film, and it was really sweet, and it just reminds you, just because Dawn is older doesn't mean she's not a kid.
Mm-hmm. I love when she's like, they only had white babies. That's why the head of the doll is white.
Something else that I like noticed right off the bat when watching the film was just how many references there were in the set design. And again, I'll talk about this with Billy later on, but literally so many references. Besides Fleetwood Mac sort of being this like theme throughout the film, you see he's watching Pee Wee Herman on TV.
Everyone I know has a big butt. Come on, Simone, let's talk about your big butt.
There was a poster for Gorillas in the Mist when they go into their uncle's sort of forbidden shed, and they find like Madonna magazines, Playboy magazines, and they reference Miss Navajo, which is actually a reference to Luther's previous film, which was a documentary about the Miss Navajo competition. But I think they're having a conversation like, who do you think you are, Miss Navajo? Like something like that.
Yeah.
Even their dog is named Reba after Reba McEntire. And they, call each other Alice Cooper, Han Solo, and they even do like Mr. T impressions.
But I pity the fool.
So it was really like, even if they're on the res, like with like no generator power, they still have all these references and things that shape their lives. And I think it really demonstrates how powerful like movies and films are for bonding. And there's like I think there's that one DVD of, I don't remember what film it was.
Yeah, it was Starman, and that's why her baby is named Jeff Bridges.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So like this is the one DVD that they have, and they can't return it because it's like so overdue that they're going to have to pay a ton of money for it. So they just rewatch this one DVD over and over. And I'm like, I completely I know that experience. Like,
Yeah. That was me with Fantasia. We watched that in my grandmother's basement like all the time. Like it was just the one movie that we would always watch.
I think this is more recent, but I remember for some reason we always watched like She's the Man and RV with Robin Williams. That one was like the one that we always watched.
Yeah.
And like they had a ton of DVDs, honestly, but for some reason we just always watched those three.
It's like your comfort movies.
Yeah. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Billy Luther. He is a Navajo, Hopi, and Laguna Pueblo filmmaker who was born in Winslow, USA. His documentary films include Miss Navajo, Grab, and the short Red Lake. Frybread Face and Me is his narrative feature debut. So my first question for you is, did you ever actually get to see Fleetwood Mac live, or is that still on the bucket list?
You go straight to that. As much as I want to kind of like push like this is just a fiction film of this young boy. It's so part of me, and that's something that I just can't push away. But yes, Fleetwood Mac has been an amazing part of my youth. The album cover of Rumors really struck kind of like something in me. The music from the beginning to the end, and yeah, I've seen them many times. I've seen Stevie many times, and it's just been I love them. I love them to this day.
I think everybody who gets a record player as a gift gets Rumors as like one of the first records. It's just one of those ones that sounds so much better played with like a physical copy.
The sound too, like isn't as good as a tape or a CD, right? It's and I was visiting one summer on my grandmother's res, and my aunt at the time, she had this record collection, and that was one of the records that she had given me. And it was just sitting in her collection, and she gave it to me because she saw that I was listening to it that summer, and it was like I was writing down the lyrics. I'd pause it, I'd take the needle off and write the lyrics, and that's kind of back in the day how now you can just find the lyrics pretty easily, but it was a pretty cool gift to get, and it stuck with me.
So, aside from Fleetwood Mac, how did music really influence the film? Because it's such a cohesive soundtrack with the film.
I kind of look back, when I was younger, my grandmother's ranch, we had no electricity, so everything was in battery, and a radio. And I just wanted to go back to that in the film, and really kind of play with music that you wouldn't normally see in a Native American film. I think people are like expecting to hear drums and, those flutes and screeching hawk stuff. And that's something I really wanted to avoid. I wanted to like set this kid who was, taken out of this urban world and kind of put into, the reservation. And I think it's really part of this character, this main character, Benny. And as a kid, for me, music was a huge influence in my life. There was MTV when they played music videos. There was a collection of CDs. Well, not really CDs at the time, but more of tapes and records. But yeah, it was something that was, really we paid attention to in the creation of this film.
And I read that you built, or maybe not you specifically, but the film built every aspect of the ranch and all the set design and everything. Uh, Tell me a bit about that process. Did you take a lot of stuff from memory? Was it just sort of sourcing what you could?
Yeah, we found this plot of land and there was nothing there. And we created everything from the corral. We brought in a trailer. Our team, our production, designing team created the Navajo, traditional Navajo hogan, outhouse, but we had a lot of Navajo PAs and set designers on set. So they understood what this world was. We created this world and we really wanted to make it feel at home. And a lot of the actors really felt like this was grandma's ranch, their grandmother's ranch. And that was great because once you went on set, you were like, okay, we're back home on the res. We had sheep, we had everything that you kind of would see on your family's ranch on the res. And then, the grandmother in the film, Sarah Natani, it was her home, and that was pretty awesome because she took on that, the land and the community of where we were at, and she just made it feel like it was hers, and that was pretty awesome.
I think that's really special and really cool, especially because if I'm correct, the a lot of the actors were quite green going into the film, or um,
Yeah, first time actors in a film. I think Morningstar and Martin Sensmeyer were pretty much the only actors who are who've worked in television and film, but everything was they were new to it. My leading actors who were both 11 at the time, this was their first film. This was their first time, and that Benny was like we cast him because he was this quiet presence that I really really loved, and he just it was him, that character was him. And Charlie, who plays Frybread face Dawn, she did her audition, and I was like, that's her. My producer and I were like, that's our female lead. And you know what, it was like, and then grandmother too, the grandmother who spoke no English, only Navajo. And and that was just like, I just my background in my documentaries, because I've been working in documentaries, nonfiction, for about 15 years. So this was my first leap into scripted, film, narrative film. So that background in my documentaries really helped working with these first time actors. Is more about finding the nuances and filming them as if, I wasn't too worried about my actors hitting their lines or their marks. It was more about letting it be more fluid and organic, and letting them just just do. And so my DP and I worked really hard, and just creating this world that wasn't too set on making marks, hitting marks, and their lines too. I just wanted it to be easy for them, and it became comfortable. it took a week. We were about a week, and everyone was just like a little, like you said, green. And it just everyone fell into this flow. And Martin Sensmeyer, he's just a pro. So he was really helping the kids and making it really kind of giving them little notes here and there. Um, and Grandma Natani, she was on set, and whenever she came on set and camera, everyone just respect camera crew, everybody. It was just so respectful, and yeah, this was her world that we were in.
I love that. And I love that everybody felt so comfortable in the set that it helped them embody their roles because it really felt like home to them.
Exactly. That's in order to get a great performance from somebody, you really have to create this world that feels real to them. So yeah.
A lot of kids have, those summers where you get shipped off to your cousins or your aunts or whatever, and you don't always see the full picture of your family because, parents, adults are hiding whatever may be going on behind the scenes. Did anything become clear to you as you were making this film about your childhood?
Yeah, I couldn't have made this film 20 years ago, like when I just got out of film school, I needed to have that life experience to really truly understand what our parents went through, and having my parents be both, different tribes. My father was, shipped to Vietnam, at a young age, and fighting for a country still that didn't really recognize indigenous and native people, that and my mother grew up in boarding schools, in the States. So their trauma was, just I understood now. 20 years later, I could understand. And also having kids, I have two kids, 16 and 8, and I think you need to have, parenting, experience to understand, the story. So it just came, it just when I wrote it, like I said, I couldn't have written this film 20 years ago. I needed to have that life experience to understand fully, and still understanding what it is for family, for being an adult, being a parent, and also just, what it was for me to be an indigenous kid in the States.
Personally, I also really relate to not being able to speak with my grandmother. My mom is Chinese, and so my grandmother and my grandfather both only spoke Chinese. And every time I visited them, it's such a physical relationship because that's the only way you can really communicate. And I love how you depicted that with the hair washing and speaking to each other, even though you don't understand. Was that, how did you overcome the language barrier? Did you find that that was the best way to do it?
In the film or
Sure.
in my life? Because they're
Let's
both
go with
pretty
both.
similar, but
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, our main character, Benny, he doesn't speak Navajo fluently. But grandmother did. And that was just the experience that I had. Like you said, like I always had a translator, whether it be my aunts, uncles, or my mom, and that's how my entire relationship and experience with my grandmother was. And making this film and then having it, with audiences watching it, you don't have to be native or indigenous to understand that there is that communication, that's that barrier that some people experience with their relatives. And I think that's why, this film resonates with people that are, non-native, and they understand. Everybody's been shipped off, somewhere, whether it be summer camp or their families, so it was I think it just really kind of was a, central, a big theme, especially since Benny and Fry, she speaks her language fluently. And for me, having those cousins who were younger than me, when I go to the reservation speaking fluently, I was just in awe. I was like, this is amazing, and it was yeah. So that experience, I think, that I had was really one of the reasons why I made this film.
So it was almost your own way of communicating to her, even though she may no longer be here, communicating
Yeah,
with her your relationship. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And and my grandmother, she passed away about a week before we started filming this.
Wow.
So there was this this, I didn't have really time to mourn. I didn't have, so always on the set there was something there, and those traditional grandparents, are slowly, going away. We don't have those traditional people, elders in our lives that we did, 10, 20 years ago. But yeah, that's just it's a tribute to our relatives and our elders.
I also wanted to ask about sort of the glimpses of maybe gender fluidity that we saw in the film. It was, I don't want to say it wasn't really uh, touched on or explained, but it was just sort of depicted. Would you be able to expand a bit more upon why you chose to include?
Yeah, well, that's my story. I'm a gay, indigenous filmmaker. And but with this character, just like me, when I was 10 or 11, you don't understand it. You're thinking, it's not defined yet. And that was a huge kind of one of the things that I thought about in creating this character, never saying, "Oh, you're gay," or it was just something that, like, it's present. And we just don't, we don't define it, because at 11 you're still figuring things out, and I didn't want to define it for this character. And I think it hits people. People see it and feel it, and like I said, it's not a huge part of this, his who he is. Yes, yes. I mean, there is a strong theme, but it's not the film.
I was curious about what films and what filmmakers inspire your work.
Well, the first time I saw film that really kind of changed my life, I didn't think that I wanted to be a filmmaker at the time, but it was the first time I saw a movie. It was Popeye. It was directed by I think it was John Huston. It was with Shelley Duvall and Robin Williams. And I tried watching it recently. It's not the greatest film, but it was the first thing that I remember watching in a movie theater. I was like maybe six, and yeah, there was just something there. It was this world that, like, it brought me in, and that's where I knew I wanted to work somehow in what was happening on screen. But later on, I knew that I wanted to be a filmmaker. I was like probably 10 when I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker. But yeah, I love kind of, I grew up on, John Hughes films, Pretty in Pink, Breakfast Club, all of those films that kind of like, those coming of age stories, those awkward teen years that you have. Cameron Crowe also, who's a big kind of influence of mine, and I love his films. And there's great, he's really great at, visual, but also the music, the score, his soundtracks of his films. So yeah, that's inspiring, very inspiring. And because when I write, I listen to a lot of music. There was a lot of, I had a playlist when I was writing this film.
What is your hope for the future of Indigenous storytelling?
Yeah, it needs to grow. It needs to grow, and hopefully these films and these television shows like Reservation Dogs. I also write and direct on Dark Winds, which is, on AMC. Yeah, I just hope that people want to go in. Right now, it's so small that all of us know each other. Taika Waititi, who was an executive producer on this film, we've known each other for 20 years. We were making short films at the same time, like, and to see his career go, but he's not just focusing on himself. He is also reaching out to other indigenous filmmakers, like, Sterling Arjo and myself, like EPing our projects. So we just need to grow because, like I said, we all know each other, and there just needs to be much more filmmakers, artists, actors, even people behind the scenes, camera crew, makeup. It's big, makes a big difference.
So with Taika, I mean, he's Maori. So how does that experience, I mean, that's across the world, that even though it's different, it's similar. Like, what is it like working with the two and working with Taika?
It's our connection to culture. It's our connection to land. The reservations, across, the U.S. They're very different, but there's also this 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 kind of like connection that we all have together. Um, it's telling our stories that, I guess is so strongly connected to our community and our culture. So, whenever he goes to a res, he feels at home, and whenever I go to his homeland, it's the same. It's a community that is so connected, and it's a very unique world. And I think a lot of it plays on film, like his film Boy, people love that film. And with Frybread Face and Me, there's this, it's so similar in terms of, this connection of this world that I think that we're, giving new audiences, something new, and yeah, it's exciting.
Well, I really want to thank you for speaking with me and for giving us a glimpse into your world. I think it was really beautiful. I loved it, and so far it's been one of my top ones that I've seen at the festival. So good luck on the premiere, and thank you for speaking with me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's really awesome to hear all these stories from filmmakers who haven't had the chance to be represented in the past, and I'm really excited that we're using this season to highlight up-and-coming filmmakers that really haven't had the chance to be in the canon, and I think it's high time we diversify the cultural canon. So if y'all get the chance, go see Frybread Face and Me. It's a really sweet coming-of-age film. If you want to watch my full chat with Billy, go on our YouTube. We have that one. We also have the one with Jen from a few weeks ago. Connect with us on Letterboxd at Uncultured Twenties. That's 20s to see all the films we've covered. Or we have a Spotify where you can listen to our playlists at Uncultured Twenties, TWENTIES.
We're also on Instagram, so follow us at Uncultured Twenties. That's TWENTIES. And if you went to TIFF, let us know what your thoughts are on the festival. What films did you love and which did you hate?
Don't forget, we also have polls on our Instagram and on our Spotify. We're Uncultured Twenties, and we'll see you very soon.
Uncultured 20s.